रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितं च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। Hare Krishna. Resuming our study and discussion from the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are in the fifth canto, fifth chapter, very important chapter. This chapter tells us the history of how this great book, this great epic of Srimad Bhagavatam appeared, it manifested. It is due to the instructions of Sri Narad Muni to Vyasadeva. And now Narad Muni is narrating after instructing Vyasadeva what to present, what should be the focus. He is giving the details, the history of his previous life. We discussed that how he was the son of the maid servant. Even though being in such an abominable birth, he got the opportunity of associating with four of the greatest pure devotees, the Bhakti Vedantas. And by their causeless mercy, he engaged in devotional service and he developed such intense reverence and affection from them, and he gradually progressed. So what was the progression? How he progressed? Those details are, this is what we are studying. So this section is the section of the process of Karma Yoga. That if you see, the sages bestowed the most confidential knowledge, the transcendental knowledge. The sages gave Narad the Sambandha Gyan. And now Narad will be acting in that Sambandha Gyan. How? These are the details. So in the previous two verses, I'm just recapping what we discussed. It was said that what is the material disease? The material disease is of trying to be the enjoyer, trying to be the bhokta, the enjoyer of the work that one performs. So one comes into bondage. So the best remedial measure for removing all troubles and miseries is to dedicate one's activity in the service of Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Etat saṁsṛti-hetavaḥ brahma tapatraya chikishitam yat ishvare bhagavati karma brahmani bhavitam. So we see ordinarily that this material world, whatever action one performs, that becomes the cause of his bondage. So what is the remedy to be released from the bondage? How to come to the platform of liberation? That one should learn, dedicate his actions for the pleasure of the Lord. So this remedy is being prescribed by the sages to Narad. And further, this is the 34th verse. Evaṁ nṛṇāṁ kriyā-yogāḥ sarve saṁsṛti-hetavaḥ evātma-vināśāya kalpante kalpitāḥ pare. So, evaṁ nṛṇāṁ kriyā-yogāḥ. Nṛṇāṁ means the people in the human form of life. So people in the human form of life, what do they perform? They perform actions, they perform the activities known as karma. Another name for karma is kriyā-yogāḥ. Kriya-yoga means performing action with this body. So when all a man's activities are dedicated to the service of the Lord, those very activities which cause his perpetual bondage become the destroyer of the tree of worth. So when one is performing action exclusively for the service of the Lord, then that action becomes the cause of one's liberation. There is no further bondage. So this principle is being explained here, that how to be released from the bondage and how to come to the platform of liberation. And what is the principle? Is one has to learn to dedicate these activities as the service of the Lord. Fruitive work, which has perpetually engaged the living being, is compared to the banyan tree in the Bhagavad-gītā. In the 15th chapter, we discussed in such detail the 15th chapter, that the living being in this material existence is trapped, is caught in that banyan tree. For it is certainly very deep rooted. Anyone remembers the banyan tree, the 15th chapter? What is the characteristic of the banyan tree of material existence? Who remembers? What is the characteristics of this banyan tree? The material existence is compared to the banyan tree. Anyone remembers? What is the characteristic? What is stated about this banyan tree of material existence? कुछ भी नहीं याद है. How is it so? The 15th chapter you don't remember? How many times we have discussed 15th chapter full dedicatedly? Every Purushottam mass we do that. ऊर्ध्वमूलम् अधः शाखम् अश्वत्थं प्राहुरव्ययाम् छन्दांसि यस्य पर्णानि यस्तं वेद स वेदवित् न रूपमस्य तथोपलभ्यते न अन्तो न चादिर् न च सम्प्रविष्टः अश्वत्थेन सविरूढमूलम् असंगशस्त्रेण दृढेन चित्वा. So it is very, very deep rooted, and to get released from it, what one has to do? One has to cut it. And what is the axe of cutting it? Is asanga shastrena, to be free from the false association. So as long as the propensity for enjoying the fruit of work is there, one has to continue the transmigration of the soul from one body or place to another, according to one's nature of work. So one will move from one branches to another branches, upper and higher, higher and lower. The propensity for enjoyment may be turned into the desire for serving the mission of the Lord. In this way, one's activity is changed into karma yoga. From performing karma, one elevates to come to the platform of karma yoga. How? When the intensity to enjoy, or the propensity or the intensity to enjoy is turned into service for the Supreme Lord. Then the karma becomes karma yoga, because there is connection with the Supreme. Or in another way, one can attain spiritual perfection while engaging in the work for which he has natural tendency. Here the word ātmā indicates the categories of all fruitive work. The conclusion is that when the result of all fruitive and other work is dovetailed with the service of the Lord. Dovetailed means that it is directed or it is connected toward the service of the Lord. It will cease to generate further karma. What is the principle? So many times we have discussed. What is the principle given in Bhagavad-gītā? how this happens? That when the result of all fruitive and other work is dovetailed with the service of the Lord, it will cease to generate further karma and will gradually develop into transcendental devotional service, which will not only cut off completely the root of banyan tree of birth, but it will also carry the performer to the lotus feet of the Lord. Very beautiful. Anyone remember the verse from Bhagavad-gītā? Very simple, very basic verse.
सर्वधर्माणि परित्यज्य प्रभु जी,
Huh?
सर्वधर्माणि परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणम.
No. Who is speaking? Gopal?
यस प्रभु.
प्लस पहले समझो तो सही क्या डिस्कशन हो रहा है. क्या डिस्कशन हो रहा है? क्या थीम डिस्कस कर रहे हैं? नारद मुनि क्या समझा रहे हैं व्यासदेव को?
तो इसमें समझा रहे हैं कि वो भगवान को समर्पित करके हम अपने सारे बंधनों से छूट सकते हैं.
जो कर्म का बंधन है उससे हम मुक्त हो सकते हैं. कैसे? उस कर्म को भगवान की तरफ
समर्पित करके.
हाँ, समर्पित करके. तो ये क्या प्रिंसिपल है? भगवत गीता में है. इसके ऊपर भगवान ने पहले 6 अध्यायों में बहुत चर्चा की है. आप तो सीधे 18 अध्याय में चले गए. क्या प्रिंसिपल है ये? बहुत सारे श्लोक हैं. दूसरे अध्याय में, तीसरे अध्याय में, चौथे अध्याय में, 5वें अध्याय में, छठे अध्याय में. एक ही वर्ष नहीं है, बहुत सारे वर्ष है. बोलिए. नहीं तो मैं पूछूंगा, बताइए मनोरम प्रभु. हाउ टू बी फ्री? हाउ वन गेट्स फ्री from the bondage of karma by dedicating one's action in the service of the Lord?
Prabhuji, one is mentioned in third chapter that yagya arthat karma no anyatra.
Yes,
Means,
that is the principal verse. Yagya arthat karmano anyatra loko ayam karma dana. Tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. Then what is the solution? Tadartham karma kaunteya. You perform action for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. Tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. Then one is free from bondage. Very good. This is one verse. What are the other verses? So many verses are there. Bolo, or other verses? Yes, there should be.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी. मयि सर्वाणि कर्माणि संन्यास्य आध्यात्म चेतसा.
Very good.
निर्ममो
Nirmama.
निरहंकार जिद्वस्व भारत.
Yuddhasva vigajvara. Very good. Mai sarvani karmani sannyas adhyatma chetasa nirashi nirmamo bhutva yuddhasva vigajvara. That therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me with full knowledge of me, without desire for profit and no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. Very good. What are the other verses? Prabhupada says this is the purpose verse of Bhagavad-gītā. This is for which Krishna has spoken Bhagavad-gītā. Very good. Very good reference. What are the other references, other verses? Many, many. In second chapter, so many verses are there. Pradeep, you should contribute. What are the verses?
दुर्गेन हि आवरम कर्म बुद्धियोग धनंजय बुद्धव सर्वमानुचना उपनाफले हेतु.
Very good. Very good. Yeah.
कर्मण्यवाधिकारस्ते मा फलेषु कदाचन.
Very good.
मा कर्मफल हेतु तेषां वस्तु.
Okay. Good. Very good. Other verses? Bhagavad Gita is full about this principle. Krishna has hammered this principle in almost every chapter, first 6 chapters predominantly. बोलो पुरुषोत्तम, वो पहले 6 चैप्टर कुछ भी नहीं आता क्या? बोलिए पुरुषोत्तम जी, बोलिए.
Oh, there is one verse like Maria with Manbuddhi.
आवाज साफ नहीं आ रही, दोबारा बोलिए.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. There is one verse like Maya Manobuddhi.
मैया सकता मना पार था, वो भगवान डिवोशन पे आ गए, कर्म नहीं मांग रहे ना. हाँ, कर्म तो किस पे होता है? एक्शन है ना, बॉडीली प्लेटफॉर्म पे. भगवान यहाँ तो कहिए मैया सकता मना पार था, यू attach your mind to me. That is from 7th chapter. It is not of the first 6 chapter. That is 7.1. मैया सकता मना पार था योगम युञ्जम मदाश्रया असंशयम समग्रम माम यथा ज्ञास्यसि तच्छृणु. यहाँ किसकी बात कर रहे हैं कि जो एक्शंस आप परफॉर्म कर रहे हैं वो एक्शन ही क्या बन जाते हैं? रीजन that becomes the source of your liberation, and that action is devotional service. बुद्धि युक्तो जहाती है उभय सुकृत दुष्कृते तस्माद् योगाय युज्यस्व योग कर्मसु कौशलम. A man engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad reactions of work even in this life. Therefore strive for yoga, which is the art of all work. Then karmjam buddhi yukta hi palam tyaktva manishina janma bindhu vinurmukta padam gacchanti anamyam. Engaging in devotional service to the Lord, great sages or devotees free themselves from the result of the work. So this is the great sage. Which great sage? This is the example of Narad Muni. Krishna is quoting in 2.5 then 1 that by engaging in devotional service to the Lord, great sages or devotees freed themselves from the result of the work. So one may ask, where is the example? What you are speaking, my dear Krishna? Here is the example. Narad Muni. Exactly, he did this. In this way, they become free from the cycle of birth and death and attain the state beyond all miseries by going back to God. It is the perfect verse. This verse is the most perfect verse suited for this prasanga or this episode which we are discussing of Narad Muni. This is 2.51. This is most appropriate. It fits perfectly. So Narad Muni is leading. He is saying the propensity for enjoyment may be turned. Okay, little bit more. As long as the propensity for enjoying the fruit of the work is there, one has to continue the transmigration of the soul from one body or place to another. Prabhupada always said that if you have any desire left, you have to come back. Why? Because the transmigration continues. The propensity for enjoyment may be turned into the desire for serving the mission of the Lord. This should be our mission. This should be our life's focus. To change the propensity for enjoying into desire for service. Very important. We should have the desire to serve the mission of the Lord. In this way, one's activity is changed into karma yoga. From performing karma, he uplifts himself. He transfers to the platform of yoga. How the yoga is there? Because there is connection with the Supreme. How the connection is there? Because there is desire to serve Him rather than to enjoy. Or in this way, by which one can attain spiritual perfection while engaging in the work for which we have the natural tendency. Very practical. So what kind of engagement is there? Not something completely opposed to what you were doing before. The same. For one, you have a natural tendency. You are comfortable, you are compatible. You are interested to perform that activity. Here the word ātmā indicates the categories of all fruitive work. The conclusion is that when the result of all fruitive and other work is dovetailed, you know, it is connected with the service of the Lord, it will cease to generate further karma. and will gradually develop into transcendental devotional service, which will not only cut off completely the root of the banyan tree of birth, but will also carry the performer to the lotus feet of the Lord. Very beautiful. What is the verse from the 15th chapter? Which is exactly to what here we see is being stated by purport of Srila Prabhupada. Where it will cease to generate further karma and will gradually develop into transcendental devotional service. And cut off completely the root of the banyan tree and will carry the performer to the lotus feet of the Lord. Exactly same verses there. It should be there on your tip. Such a small chapter, 15 chapter, having only 20 verses. And we have done that chapter so many times. So what is there to think on it? Should shoot immediately. Which verse is this? You have all forgotten 15th chapter. Pradeep, at least you had memorized all the 20 verses. Which verse is talking about this principle? Okay, that is also there. But it is not perfect. There is another verse which perfectly fits. Talking about how to cut the tree and how to be fixed in the lotus feet of the Lord. क्या बात है? भागवत गीता भी भूल गए क्या? थोड़ा सा चेतन चरितामृत या चेतन भागवत पढ़ा तो सब भूल गए? बोलो दर्शन, which verse is this?
नारूप अस्यः तथोप न लभ्यते न
अंतो न चाधे न च संप्रतिष्ठा
संप्रतिष्ठा
अश्वत्थेन सविरूढ़ मूलम असंग शस्त्रेण दृढ़ेन च then tata padam tad parimargitavyam yasmin gatana nivartanti bhuya tameva chadyam purusham prapadde yata pravritti prasata purani. What is the translation? Read. You have the translation with you? Bashir?
So, the real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial.
Yeah, thank you. So one has to cut the root of this ashwat tree. How to cut the root of the ashwat tree? By engaging in devotional service. The summary is that first one has to seek the association. Now there is summarization of the entire episode of Narad Muni. How Narad Muni became what he is, Devrishi Narad. The summary is that one has to first of all seek the association of pure devotees, but who are not only learned in the Vedanta, but who are also self-realized souls and unalloyed devotees of Lord Krishna. Three aspects. They should be learned in the Vedas, in the scriptures, Vedanta. They should also be self-realized. And also they should be unalloyed devotees of Lord Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. In that association, the neophyte devotee must render loving service, physically and mentally without reservation. So the first thing is to find such association and how to gradually grow in the association is by rendering loving service, both physically and mentally without reservation. Without reservation means whatever, whenever, wherever. My teacher told me this, three things. Service means whatever. Today you told me to go and distribute books, I will do that. Tomorrow you tell me to cook, I will do that. Next day you tell me to go and ask for donations, I will go and do that. So whatever. It is not, अरे ये क्या है? मुझे एक बता दो, मेरा what is my service? या तो मैं डोनेशन लेके आऊंगा या कुकिंग करूंगा, दोनों नहीं होगा. Then one is not in service mode. He is in his own zone. He is thinking that this belongs to me. He cannot serve. Very good example is given of water. You know the characteristic of water? Water is always malleable. Understand what is malleable? It is always liquid. If you put the water in the glass, it will take the shape of glass. If you put the water in the bucket, it will take the shape of bucket. If you put the water in the pot, it will take the shape of the pot. That means no resistance, no argumentation, no refusal, whatever. That is first instance. The first criteria of the character. Whatever comes as service is welcome. Not easy, very difficult. Because the conditioned soul has such inflated false ego. Because of the false ego, he is not willing to take the subordinate position. Through service also he wants to control. So whatever. Then wherever you are required to do service, whether you are in your home zone or where you are outside the home zone, whatever, wherever, and whenever. This is very first class. This attitude of service is transcendental. It will put one into the transcendental platform. So, what he has to learn in that association, the neophyte devotee must render loving service both physically and mentally without reservation. Without reservation means whatever, whenever, and wherever. We see service attitude of some of our devotees also in Yatra. They do every service. Whatever service is required, whenever it is required, whatever, whenever, and wherever. Without reservation. Without any hesitation. So that is glorious. So this is what Narad Muni is speaking to Vyasadeva. And service is both physically and mentally. This service attitude will induce the great souls to be more favorable in bestowing their mercy. So this service attitude, what it does, it attracts the mercy. It invokes the compassion and mercy in the hearts of the devotees, which infuses the neophytes with all the transcendental qualities of the pure devotees. So this is how the neophyte becomes as potent as a pure devotee. How? By his loving service attitude, both physically and mentally. Gradually, one develops a strong attachment to hearing the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Why others cannot hear? Because one has not followed the process. Without having this service attitude, one will not be able to hear. Because by this service attitude only, one gradually develops into the strong attachment to hearing the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, which makes him able to catch up the constitutional position of the gross and subtle bodies, and beyond them, the knowledge of the pure soul and its eternal relation with the Supreme Soul. So this by hearing process, what comes is, so many times we have discussed the Sambandha Jnana. He knows his constitutional position, who he is, He also knows that there are coverings. He is not actually this body, nor is he the subtle body. He is beyond both. How is he situated in that? By the knowledge which he acquires from hearing. Because after the relation is ascertained, the sambandh jnana, exactly. After the relation is ascertained, by establishment of the eternal relation, pure devotional service to the Lord begins. So without sambandh jnana, seva cannot begin. Without sambandha, there is no question of seva. Se sambandha nahi jar. Janma vritha gela tar. Sei pashu bada duracha. So this was not invoked the sambandha jnana. Then his life is useless. After the relation is ascertained by establishment of the eternal relation, pure devotional service to the Lord begins gradually developing into perfect knowledge of the personality of Godhead. This is how progress is made. Beyond the purview of impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma, by such Purushottam Yoga, it is stated in the Bhagavad-gītā, one is made perfect even during the present corporeal existence. You understand what is present corporeal existence? Anyone? What is present corporeal existence? सरल है, कुछ भी मुश्किल नहीं है. क्या बात है? आप लोग बोलना नहीं चाहते? Pranav, why you are silent?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, in this material life only.
Yeah. How you can come to this stage?
By following the by serving the Supreme Lord.
Only after the relation is established. Otherwise, it will never happen. That is what he's saying. The service will only begin. Hear attentively. After the relation is ascertained by the establishment of the eternal relation, pure devotional service to the Lord begins gradually developing into perfect knowledge of the personality of Godhead, beyond the purview of impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma. Okay. By such Purushottam Yoga, as is stated in the Bhagavad-gītā, one is made perfect even during the present corporeal existence. Which verse is this? Even in the present corporeal existence. You understand what is present corporeal existence? बोलिए, टाइम खत्म हो रहा है. मैं एक और श्लोक लूंगा. By such Purushottam Yoga, it is stated in Bhagavad-gītā, one is made even okay, and one exhibits all good qualities of the Lord to the highest percentage. Such is the gradual development by association of the pure devotees. Satam prasanga mama vir samvidho bhavanti hitkarna rasayana katha tajjoshanada suapavarga vartmani shraddharatim bhaktiranukrameshyati. It is in 3rd canto, 25th chapter and 25th verse. 3:25. I'm not taking it. You can refer, you can study. Very beautiful verse. That it is exactly, that verse is being exactly here. The purport is given by Srila Prabhupada. I'll take one more verse. Yad atra kriyate karma Bhagavad Paritoshanam Jnanam Yattat Adhinam Hi Bhakti Yoga Samanvitam. Whatever work is done here in this life for the satisfaction of the mission of the Lord is called Bhakti Yoga. So how the Karma Yoga is transforming to become Bhakti Yoga. For the satisfaction of the mission of the Lord is called Bhakti Yoga, or transcendental loving service to the Lord. And what is called knowledge becomes a concomitant factor. The general and popular notion is that by discharging fruitive work in terms of the direction of the scriptures, one becomes perfectly able to acquire transcendental knowledge for spiritual realization. How many of you agree? Again, I am reading. The general and popular notion is that by discharging fruitive work in terms of the directions of the scriptures, one becomes perfectly able to acquire transcendental knowledge for spiritual realization. How many of you agree with this statement? How many of you agree? Acha. Only one. Others do not. Okay, Pranav. Explain a little bit. You have Bhagavatam with you, you should have the Bhagavatam with you always. Whenever we are discussing, you should be able to have the Bhagavatam to be able to see the purports. Boliye. Pranav Prabhu, you said you agree, so please explain.
Yes, Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
You have Bhagavatam in your hand?
Yes, Prabhuji, I have Bhagavatam.
Okay. So please explain this, what has been mentioned here in the opening of this purport.
By discharging our duties as per the guidelines of scriptures, one gradually realize the transcendental spiritual realization. It is true, Prabhuji.
By performing karma kand, one gets transcendental knowledge. This is what you have been, receiving the knowledge. Discharging fruitive work is what? Karma kand. And how karma kand is performed? When we say karma kand, how is it performed? Is it performed by one's own whims or imagination? Okay. So by karma kand, one will never receive the transcendental knowledge. Yes, it is there, the progression is there, but it may take many, many lives. Feeling sleepy. Go ahead. Bhakti yoga is considered by some to be another form of karma. But factually, Bhakti yoga is above both karma and jnana. Bhakti yoga is independent of jnana or karma. On the other hand, jnana and karma are dependent on Bhakti yoga. So many times we have discussed this principle that jnana and karma are called. Anyone remembers the term? Sapeksh. Sapeksh means they are dependent. And bhakti is, remember the term? Sanskrit term for bhakti? Jnana and karma are sapeksh. Yes, Sachishwata bro?
Nirpeksh.
Yes. It is nirpeksh. It is independent. Whereas jnana and karma are both interdependent. They are not independent. Bhakti yoga is independent of jnana or karma. On the other hand, jnana and karma are dependent on bhakti yoga. This kriya yoga or karma yoga as recommended by Sri Narad to Vyas is specifically recommended because the principle is to satisfy the Lord. The Lord does not want his sons, the living beings, to suffer the threefold miseries of life. He desires that all of them come to him and live with him. But going back to what it means, one must purify himself from the material infections. This purification means attainment of spiritual knowledge. Therefore, knowledge is dependent on karma or work done on behalf of the Lord. Other knowledge being devoid of bhakti yoga or satisfaction of the Lord cannot lead one to the kingdom of God, which means that it cannot even offer salvation, as already explained in connection with the stanza beginning from Neshkarmyam api achyut bhava varjitam, Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.12. The conclusion is that a devotee engaged in the unalloyed service of the Lord, specifically in hearing and chanting of his transcendental glories, becomes simultaneously spiritually enlightened by the divine grace as confirmed in the Bhagavad-gītā. So I'll stop here. And I'll take verse number 36. Few verses are left from the next session. Tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Somebody has to say something or any question? So here in this section we see how to perform action so that the action becomes the basis of one's liberation or inaction. No more further karma. Termination of the cycle of karma. कोई प्रश्न है या कोई चर्चा है तो बोलिए. Yes, मनोराम प्रभु.
Prabhuji, bhakti is independent of jnana and karma. It is little bit I understood, but then jnana and karma, how they are dependent, Prabhuji? How to understand on bhakti yoga?
Very good. So as I said, karma, if one performs karma and he does not perform bhakti, if he does not connect his karma to bhakti, so what will be the result of his karma?
Sinful reactions.
No, not necessarily sinful. But he will continue in the cycle of samsara. Repeatedly birth and death. Because karma means creating future bodies. So without the element or the infusion of bhakti with karma, it cannot lead to perfection. It cannot lead to liberation. So if karma is dependent on bhakti, then only the karma becomes yoga, no? When there is connection with the Supreme God. So it becomes karma yoga. So if you have to have yoga, then there is bhakti. So karma is dependent on bhakti. Similarly, jnana. What does jnana bring? The jnana bestows or brings one to the level of vision or knowledge that one is not this body. It is beyond the body. But what is the purpose? If that jnana is not connected to Krishna, he wants to be detached. Through jnana, what one learns to be detached or renunciate. So he can leave his house, he can leave his family, he can leave his business or whatever. What is the purpose of that jnana? The purpose of the jnana is to have eternal loving relationship with the Lord. Otherwise, jnana will lead where? To impersonal realization. Jnana normally leads to where? Is to impersonal realization. So both are dependent. Jnana and karma are dependent on bhakti to achieve the perfection or the summit position. Otherwise, both of them, they cannot liberate. Neither karma can liberate, nor Gyan can liberate. So they are dependent on bhakti, whereas bhakti is not dependent on them. Okay?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anyone else? पूछो, नहीं पूछोगे तो वो किताब में ही रहेगा. नहीं